Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1163 of our daily content grind. Today we're kind of doing a video for me because I just kind of want to gush over one of my favorite characters who I don't think gets the justice these days that he rightfully deserves. So there's a lot to love about the Seekers. In fact, I think I like most of the Seekers for very different reasonings. I like the schemy kind of personality of Starscream. Who doesn't? He's obviously one of the most popular Transformers of them all. I like the color scheme on Skywarp. It's probably my favorite of all the Seekers. I like the different detailed designs on Thrust with the VTOL wings. I always have a soft spot for Ramjet because it's the only G1 Seeker I had as a kid. Dirge is there. And then even like extended ones like Acid Storm, who, I finally get a green Seeker. Finally. Or ones like Slipstream. There's a female Seeker, and she's got this really interesting, kind of like mysterious personality to her. But through all of that, there's Thundercracker, who I overlooked for so long because I wasn't really aware of what he was supposed to be. But then when it was finally brought out, I'm like, okay, this is the most fascinating Seeker of all of them. This is the one I like the most now. So let's kind of go into this a little bit. So for those unaware, let's take a look back all the way at the beginning. This is a page from the series Bible of Transformers, like literally a scan of the guide that they used in the original cartoon in order to actually write the episodes and make sure all the different writers were all going in with the same personalities and designs in mind when they created all these episodes. But for Thundercracker, so his profile specifically, these were kept very short because, of course, 80s cartoon. Dedicated to flight, contemptuous of anything that cannot fly. Not totally convinced of Decepticons' cause, but persuaded to continue battling Autobots. Doubts about the cause sometimes impedes effectiveness. This is mirrored and extended a little bit on his toy bio, where it actually kind of goes into the same details of he's not really completely on board with this universal conquest thing, but he's kind of peer pressured into going along with it. Now, remember, there's two sides of Generation 1 fiction from the 80s. We're looking at a cartoon series Bible, which does inform the comic books as well, but the comic books had their own interpretation, and they again extended a little further. Let's take a look at the weakness section of Thundercracker's bio in the original Marvel Comics, which is not scaled properly for this layout. Let us momentarily fix that. There we go. Lingering doubts in Thundercracker's subconscious sometimes surface and impede his effectiveness, particularly when innocent human lives are endangered. Usually his fear of Decepticon leader Megatron compels him to overlook these doubts. So, in one version of the fiction, Thundercracker is kept in line by his fellow Decepticons, kind of like rallying him to the cause and kind of basically hyping him up into like believing in the whole like conquest of Earth thing. But in the Marvel fiction, it's gone even farther to also account for the fact that he really doesn't like what they're doing to the humans. They're innocent life forms that are suffering, for this conquest. And here it's not just like, okay, Starscream and Skywarp keep him towing the line and all that. We've gone even farther with, no, he's terrified of Megatron. So he stays obedient to avoid his wrath. Completely understandable, by the way. So, Thundercracker, from his onset, was supposed to have this interesting, like, I'm in the Decepticons, but not because I'm necessarily evil or agree with the whole conquest thing. I just feel like I don't have a choice, because I'm going to get killed by somebody if I don't. Which makes him by far the most interesting Seeker by personality. It would have been a really nice, unique thing to have. I mentioned that I didn't really understand the character because I grew up with the cartoon, or reruns and VHSs of the cartoon at least. And that meant that my depiction of Thundercracker was just as a goon. He was just one of Megatron's goons. You know? Like, and here's the thing. In the original cartoon, I would go so far as to say he's the least memorable of the Seekers because he doesn't feature like the prominent personality of Starscream, and he doesn't have the cool teleport power that make you remember Skywarp. He's just kind of there. Like, he's the third Seeker in the batch. You know? And he's just kind of there to give Starscream and Skywarp someone else to talk to. Like, he doesn't really serve a strong purpose in the series other than to just fill out the Decepticon ranks. He only has one real episode that was able to focus on him, and that was A Plague of Insecticons. Not because the episode was about him or that he did anything to the plot. He's mostly there in place of Starscream, who an episode prior was due for a very bad punishment from Megatron. If you want to view this as having some sort of continuity, you can use as an explanation, but it also just kind of feels like they wrote Starscream into the episode and decided, you know what? We need to sell the other toys. Can you just like swap in Thundercracker? Because it's literally like Megatron, Soundwave, and Thundercracker. You know, who is a color choice away from just being Starscream. So it does kind of feel like he was kind of like crowbarred in a little bit. It's an unusual thing. Now, he kind of goes that way throughout the first two seasons. He doesn't really get to do much of anything, unfortunately. He's just kind of there. He's just kind of in the fight scenes, talking, you know, once in a while. And in the Marvel Comics, you know, where they expanded his bio to include the thing about humans, he's largely the same. He doesn't really get to do anything in the Marvel Comics as well, except participate in the battles of others. And he attacks humans, so he doesn't really have any qualms about that in that book. So here we have two different depictions, two different bios that both proclaim, yeah, like he doesn't really believe in this cause and he doesn't like hurting humans. And neither depiction that were going off of the Bibles really reflect that. And it's such a lost opportunity. It just kind of reduces him to just some guy. You know, that's the worst thing you can be as a character in something, is just some guy. Thundercracker does continue to exist, particularly when Transformers go back to vehicle forms, but he largely exists to be Starscream's repaint. He was that in Action Masters over in the UK. He was that in Armada, and to a lesser extent, he's also there if Skywarp needs somebody else to be around. That goes for Machine Wars, and also goes for the next time we actually saw a character named Thundercracker in a cartoon, who is a far cry from the Thundercracker from the original days. Granted, this is a character who would largely not be related to G1 Thundercracker. You know, he is Thundercracker in name. He's not bad. He's okay. He's just kind of like he's just kind of like a dumb grunt of a character. There's some charm to him, especially like later in the series where he kind of gets goofy. And at the very end where it's just like, I'm kind of sick of this fighting. I kind of like being an Autobot now. And it just gets dragged back into what's left of the Decepticons. It's not what you expect, though. It's not what you're after. And frankly, Thundercracker in general just kind of exists for a long, long time of just being there. He's there to fill a crowd. He's there to serve a one-note purpose. And that gets really, really frustrating when you know what the character was originally supposed to be. We move on to Transformers Animated, which had a dramatically different take on what the Seekers were. Rather than being a individual squad, no, instead they're all clones of Starscream to kind of explain why so many exist. But this time, he's not actually Thundercracker. You know, that's the name on the box, but he's just a clone of Starscream, who represents one of Starscream's aspects, and in this case, it's his egomania. He thinks he is vastly superior to everyone. And admittedly, that plays a little bit into part of his original G1 bio, where he has contempt for anything that cannot fly. But at the same time, yeah, again, it's not even Thundercracker. It's Thundercracker on the, it's like on Armada. It's Thundercracker because the name is on the box, but that ain't who he is. You know, in Armada, it was just another Starscream. In Animated, he's just another Starscream. He really is. Unfortunately, the flat depictions of the character just plague him in the cartoons, no matter what they really do. In Cyberverse, he really is just one of the Decepticons that's just, you know, basically just harassing the heroes once in a while. And he doesn't really have any character to him other than, yeah, he's just a bad guy that turns into a jet. Now, at least he has voice lines, at least he has a character, at least he's named Thundercracker. You know, at least this one really is Thundercracker. It's not just a substitute Starscream. But it's frustrating. You know, like, it just felt like that for a long time. Unless you were Starscream, if you were a Seeker, you got nothing. You got literally nothing. And then, of course, in the current cartoon, we don't have a Thundercracker at all. We have a Nova Storm serving in the place of Thundercracker. Oddly enough, from what we are aware of Earthspark, they wanted to have Thundercracker in there, you know, because we haven't really had a cartoon that has reunited the original trio of Seekers in a long, long time. Really, I don't think we've had that since G1, weirdly enough. So when they wanted to do it in Earthspark, the answer from Hasbro was, no, you can't switch his gender. Because they wanted it to be two girl Seekers. So Nova Storm gets swapped in because, for whatever reason, at this point, Thundercracker's gender identity was considered sacred, and you're not allowed to switch that on us. The odd thing to this situation is that's the second time Nova Storm has gotten to step in because they wanted a female character on the Decepticon roster, and they wouldn't let them flip a Seeker. In Cyberverse, it was Skywarp, because Nova Storm appeared as a mostly purple Decepticon jet, very similar to the Thundercracker I just showed you. It was very clear it was supposed to be Skywarp, gender flip to female, and they didn't let them do it then. Oddly enough, by the time Season 3 came around, they didn't care, and Skywarp got to be female, and Skywarp is female in Earthspark as well now. This has nothing to do with Thundercracker. I'm just explaining it's a very weird situation why Thundercracker isn't in the current cartoon when it's kind of clear that was the original intent. You know, as far as we know, this was supposed to be Thundercracker. He's just blue. Just blue instead. No. So, obviously, there's no cartoon depiction of Thundercracker that I absolutely love, because he's never really been allowed to do anything. He's certainly never been allowed to be his original characterization. However, this is where comic books are lovely. Now, if we go into all the the mid-2000s, early 2000s comic books and like the Dreamwave era and all, you know, like a lot of even the Japanese mangas and books, Thundercracker is still basically that cartoon characterization of he's just kind of there. You know, he's not really standing out. No. We had to wait till IDW. And not even at the beginning. Early on in IDW, Thundercracker just is one of the rank and file. He just kind of falls in with the rest of the Decepticons. And while he has his grievances with some of the choices that Megatron makes, he really only seems to voice them when others around him are like in agreement. Okay, yeah, Megatron's losing it. In this scene, everyone is kind of agreeing with him because instead of going with all these intricately laid plans that the Decepticons have been carrying out to this point in the books, he's just calling in Six-Shot to lay waste. So yeah, here he has reason to speak up because everyone around him is also kind of like, yeah, this is nuts. This is wrong. This is a bad idea. This is a really bad idea. That said, All Hail Megatron comes around, and you start to see a difference in Thundercracker. Some characterization is actually starting to break through. He does not like the things the Decepticons are doing. We find out that this Thundercracker has a code of honor. He kind of decides what we're doing here. This wanton destruction, this senseless murdering of innocent life, is actually beneath us. This is dishonorable. This is a waste of our time and resources. This is just cruelty for the sake of cruelty. And that Thundercracker is not on board with that. During All Hail Megatron, we got this, frankly, like, surprising scene where, thanks to the machinations of Megatron, New York is going to be nuked. And with the Autobots not really having any, having an alternative, they actually go along with Thundercracker, who is offering to save the city. And this is the scene. He actually catches a nuke and detonates it safely in orbit for the sake of saving a city full of innocent humans. It's a Thundercracker finally doing what Thundercracker was always supposed to do 24 years prior. Imagine that. Imagine this. Like, this is original 84, Transformer character, sorely neglected for over 2 decades, and it's only here. It's only here in the early years of what a lot of people would claim is like the best stretch of Transformer comics we ever got. It's only here that someone finally said, Thundercracker is actually going to act like Thundercracker, like the first vision of Thundercracker always was supposed to be. And it's such an interesting shift. It makes him so unique amongst Decepticons, especially the Seekers, who you kind of view as one unit. The idea that any Seeker would break from the expectation, the plan, the rank and file under Starscream is insane. Because you view Starscream as a traitor to Megatron, but he's still very much a Decepticon. No, this is someone who you wouldn't think would ever turn against Megatron, turning against him because of the way they're doing things. Not because, like, he wants power, just he wants out of this. He wants out of this murdering. The evolution of the character is fantastic. Thundercracker goes from just this, just this grunt who's there to fill out a battle scene to one of the most interesting characters in Transformers. Someone who looks at Earth culture and goes, you know what? They actually transform better than we do. We live for millions of years, and yet we never change. And yet, here are these humans. They each live less than a century, but they actually go through so many changes. They are constantly changing, and they're constantly adapting to what their world does. Unlike Transformers, who are millions of years stagnant. It's almost poetic. It's almost like it's a moment of brilliance and genius. They're like, in all of Transformers, no one has ever picked up on this. The Transformer society is just kind of the same for millions of years compared to Earth, where, we change drastically in just the course of 100 years. And for someone like Thundercracker to sit back and watch that and go, I have to hand it to these creatures. They're actually really good at surviving. It says a lot, there's something philosophical about this Thundercracker as he realizes something no other Transformer has. And it leads him down so many different paths. He's obsessed with Earth culture to the point, he's even eclipsing Jazz and Blaster in that regard. He's TV addicted, and it's getting creative juices flowing. He wants to be a writer. He may or may not have won an Oscar. We don't know. We got The Sopranos cut off just before you found out what happened on that one. Hey, it's an honor just to be nominated, right? He has a pet dog that he genuinely loves and adores. His best friend's a human, and it's Marissa Fairborn, of all people. It's fantastic. It's such a fun character. It's such a cool characterization. And to actually see that original idea from Bob Budiansky from 1984 finally come to fruition and actually be incredibly engaging and cool, it's so good. It's so good. When IDW switched to 2.0 and then ultimately lost the license, one of the things that hurt me the most was the idea that this Thundercracker would be completely gone. There's that part in me that really does want to turn on an episode of Earthspark toward the end of the second season and go, look, all those comic books written about the Transformer adventures, they were written by Thundercracker. Because how much would that be in character? It would explain where he is. It'd explain where he is, and like it would be perfect. It would be absolutely perfect for him just masquerading as a comic book author. Oh, it'd be so fun. And I was so worried. I was so worried that this depiction that was so good in IDW would be lost forever, and we just kind of go back to just, he's just Starscream's lackey. We have Skybound. And I keep telling you, I do the Skybound reviews because I genuinely love those books and the characterizations that they are doing. They are pulling really interesting stories out of what should be tired tropes and characters from Transformers. And one of the things that they seem to be doing is setting up for that Thundercracker who does not want what the Decepticons are doing, who has compassion and concern for all things that are alive, not just other Decepticons. This is a cut from the next issue. This is from the preview pages. When they are senselessly destroying a city, and even though the Decepticons admit, like, they talk about the execution of humans as if it is like Starscream is one thing. Starscream and Thundercracker or Skywarp have fun squishing humans, but when you talk to like Shockwave or Soundwave about it, they come across as though like it's unpleasant, but it must be done. You know, the same way you would talk about like getting rid of a rat infestation in your home. Thundercracker is sneaking around to save humans. He's trying to spare them what they're doing. He is not comfortable with what's going on. It's going to lead to him being very, very interesting. Skybound's a series that's very happy to kill off its characters, but I'm genuinely hoping that Thundercracker sticks around and we see that kind of character turn again. I would genuinely love to see a Thundercracker who would actually go full Autobot. Because it feels like if any of the Seekers were going to, it would be him. Because he does not like what Megatron does. He does not like harming humans. And ultimately, he just doesn't fit in. If that's true, then he's been on the wrong side of the war for about 40 years. I think it's time to change that. So there we go. I just wanted to talk Thundercracker today. He was on my mind. I wanted to gush. I wanted to have fun. And I wanted to kind of share a little bit of hope I have for the character in the new comic books, because it does look like he's going places that catch my interest all over again. So there you go. That's my look at one of my favorites. And yeah, it took a long time for him to get there, but he got there. So thank you everyone for watching. I will see you next time.